talk about your main argument in these last two debates, which is the question of decriminalizing border crossers, people who come to this country. I want you to take a moment and talk about that, because that issue came up in another way today. Cory Booker came out and said, let's start discriminating in behavior in favor of PhD people from India or somewhere else. It seemed like he was saying the Republicans say do it based on what they call merit immigration, as opposed to people coming from this hemisphere into this country. Tell me what your values are on that, and how far will you push for that beyond your candidacy to putting in the Democratic platform in 2020, that we decriminalize border crossing across the Rio Grande?
I think that's the right thing to do. And what I said tonight in my conversation with Vice President Biden is that, look, you know, one of us has learned the lessons of the past, and some of those lessons are that you can't deport your way to the negotiating table with Mitch McConnell and the Republicans. Doesn't matter how cool you are or how many people you deport, these right-wingers are never going to, that's never going to be enough for them. We can't wait like we did in 2009 and 2010 for immigration reform. And if we want to guarantee that little children will no longer be separated from their parents, then we need to repeal that law. Now, it was also pointed out that, look, that doesn't mean that if somebody crosses the border, there aren't consequences. There still are legal consequences. That's a civil action. We still
How would you be picked up, for example, to be blunt about it, if you crossed the border under your provision, getting rid of that criminal code? What would happen to you if you crossed into the United States illegally without documentation? What would happen under the civil law?
Well, what happens right now for a lot of folks is that you're still part of a court process.
Can you be picked up?
Of course, yeah. You picked up, processed. I would not.
Can you be arrested?
I would not. Yeah, you're held, you know, and processed. However, I would end this detention. And those children that are in the detention centers, I would find them a loving home, because a lot of them have family members who are already here. And there are sponsors that also take some in. I would put my resources there instead of these terrible detention facilities where people are sleeping on the floors, not with no toothbrush, no soap. Oftentimes they're hungry. But this is part of a bigger plan, too, right? Look, we have to do a 21st century Marshall Plan for Central America so that people can find
safety. What about Vice President Biden? Is he culpable for those deportations under the Obama administration?
Well, he never answered the question. You know, what he didn't answer the question is, you know, did he ever speak to the president? You know, did he ever say anything during that time? When I was mayor of San Antonio, I was critical about that in 2014 and before that. And during the administration, I had those conversations. When I got to the administration was after they had done DACA, and as they were doing DAPA, the administration was getting better and deportations were going down. But, you know, the vice president was never clear about any role that he had to play there.
You made a very interesting point there. I just want to end with this. You said that the attempt to convince Mitch McConnell that this past administration was serious about illegal immigration, they deported a lot of people. That was supposed to show their good faith, right? And you said that didn't work with McConnell.
That's right. I mean, you can't deport your way to the negotiating table. And if I'm president, I'm going to immediately move to reform our immigration laws to fix our broken legal immigration system and the rest.
And you want it in the platform?
I do, of course.
Thank you so much, Mr. Secretary. Thank you for joining.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.